All right, so let's dive into this Chevron earnings call. Q4 2024, they're celebrating a pretty incredible year. Record production, huge cash flow, and some really interesting moves in renewable energy. A lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there really is. I think what's so fascinating about Chevron right now is that they're kind of excelling on all fronts. They're not just pumping out record amounts of oil, they're also generating tons of cash and making some really strategic investments. It's a pretty powerful combo.
It really is. So let's start with those production numbers. They hit record levels globally, A&D in the US. What's driving all that growth?
Well, it's kind of a mix of strategic investments and just really good operational efficiency. A good example is their production in the Permian Basin, which surged almost 18%. And that's significant, right? Because the Permian is one of the most prolific oil fields in the world. So that tells us that Chevron's really good at extracting oil, especially from that kind of challenging terrain.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there's all this cash they're generating, almost $8 billion from asset sales alone, plus those record returns to shareholders through dividends and buybacks.
Yeah, that's a key part of their strategy, I think. They're rewarding investors. They're not just sitting on a pile of cash. They're actively returning it to shareholders. And in fact, over the past 2 years, they've shrunk their outstanding share count by 10% just through stock buybacks. So that's a really strong signal that they believe in their own company.
Okay, so record production, strong cash flow, investors are happy. What does the future hold for Chevron?
Well, they're projecting a $10 billion increase in annual free cash flow by 2026. That's huge GE.
That is massive. What are the key drivers behind that?
So it's a few things. They have several new projects coming online in the Gulf of Mexico, like Anchor, Whale, and Ballymore. These are deep water projects, and they're producing high margin barrels, which basically means they're super profitable.
So they're not just drilling anywhere. They're being pretty strategic about it.
Exactly. And then there's that massive Tengiz project in Kazakhstan. It's also known as TCO. That just started producing oil, and it's adding a whopping 260,000 barrels of daily production capacity.
Wow. It's like adding an entirely new oil field to their portfolio.
Pretty much, yeah. And at $70 per barrel of Brent crude, that project alone is expected to generate $5 billion in free cash flow for Chevron in 2025. And $6 billion in 2026. So that's a major contributor to their growth.
Got it. So we have the Gulf of Mexico projects, Tengiz Chevron oil. What about their strategy in the Permian Basin? Are they just going all out there too?
Well, this is where it gets kind of interesting. They're actually moderating their Permian growth to prioritize profitability over just pure production. So they're not just chasing volume, they're focused on getting the highest returns possible.
Smart, shows some discipline and long-term vision. But Chevron's not G's an oil company anymore, are they? They're making some pretty significant moves in renewable energy too.
Oh, absolutely. They're building this diverse energy portfolio. It goes way beyond oil and gas. This is something that any investor, honestly, anyone interested in the future of energy should be paying attention to.
Let's talk about those renewable energy initiatives then. What are they focusing on?
A few things. They're expanding their production of renewable fuels like biodiesel and renewable diesel. And, those can be used in existing engines, helps reduce carbon emissions. They're also investing heavily in hydrogen, which is a clean-burning fuel that can be produced from renewable sources.
Like their ACES green hydrogen project in Utah. It's supposed to be a game changer for storing renewable energy, right? Like a giant green battery.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It'll store renewable energy underground in the form of hydrogen. It's a way to address that kind of intermittency problem with renewable sources like solar and wind. You can think of it as a giant energy bank. You can deposit excess renewable energy and then withdraw it later when you need it.
Interesting. So they've got renewable fuels, hydrogen, what else?
They're also involved in carbon capture and storage, which basically captures CO2 emissions from industrial facilities and stores them underground. They have projects underway in the Gulf of Mexico and at their Pascagoula refinery.
So tackling those emissions on multiple fronts?
Yep.
And I also read that they're getting into power generation. Seems a little unusual for an oil company.
It is, but it makes sense if you think about the bigger picture. They're partnering with GE to build natural gas power plants, specifically for data centers.
Oh, because data centers require massive amounts of energy, and they're capitalizing on the growth of AI.
Exactly. It's a smart move. It leverages their expertise in natural gas, and it positions them to benefit from that increasing demand for data center power.
So it's like they're playing this long game, anticipating future trends and making sure they're in a good position. But with all this growth and diversification, are they still staying financially disciplined? It seems like they're investing in a lot of different areas.
It's a great question, and the answer is yes. they're still committed to capital discipline. And they're targeting a $2 to $3 billion reduction in structural costs by the end of 2026. So they're optimizing their portfolios, streamlining operations, and using technology to become more efficient. It's all about maximizing those returns.
So not just throwing money around.
Nope.
Very impressive picture.
It is. They're producing record amounts of oil, generating tons of cash, returning value to shareholders, investing in the future of energy, all while maintaining financial discipline.
So that's Chevron in a nutshell. A traditional energy giant transitioning towards a cleaner energy future. And this is just the beginning. In part 2 of this deep dive, we're going to explore a bold trade idea, inspired by Chevron's unique position in the energy market, so stay tuned.
So, with this transition that Chevron is making, kind of begs the question, how does all this impact their investment potential?
Yeah, for sure. That's what every investor wants to know.
Right. And that brings us to our kind of crazy trade idea for today.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So, given Chevron's move into renewables and all that cash they have, what if we shorted a traditional energy ETF and then simultaneously went long on Chevron?
Whoa, okay, that's a pretty bold move. Walk me through the logic there.
Okay, so basically it's a bet that Chevron will do better than the rest of the energy sector. As the world moves towards cleaner energy, you're kind of shorting the companies that are slow to change and then going long on the one leading the charge.
So you're saying, I think Chevron will thrive in this new energy world while others might struggle to keep up.
Exactly. Of course, this is a high conviction trade, not for the risk averse. But if Chevron keeps doing what they're doing, it could really pay off.
It's definitely something to think about. But of course, we had to say our usual disclaimer here.
Oh, right. Of course. This is not financial advice. Any investment decisions should be made after doing your own research and talking to a financial advisor.
Always good to remind everyone. So let's take a step back for a second. What's the big takeaway from Chevron's story? What does it tell us about energy in general?
I think the main takeaway is that the energy world is changing. And companies like Chevron, who used to be all about oil and gas, are adapting. They're becoming these diversified energy companies, involved in both hydrocarbons and renewables.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch. For anyone who wants to learn more about this, what would you suggest they do?
Definitely check out Chevron's full earnings call transcript. Pay attention to what they're saying about their renewable energy projects and who they're partnering with. That's where the real future is.
Good advice. And we like to leave our listeners with something interesting to think about.
Okay, so here's one. Chevron has tons of cash, right? And they want to be a leader in this new energy world. So could they become a big player in the electric vehicle charging market?
That's an interesting thought. Why do you think that's possible?
Well, they already have all those gas stations, right? And they're investing in renewable energy. Plus, they have the money to make big moves. And the EV charging market is still pretty new.
You're right. It would be a bold move for sure. But Chevron has shown that they're not afraid to shake things up. They could turn those gas stations into these energy hubs, offer all kinds of options for different vehicles.
Right. It fits perfectly with their strategy of becoming this all-in-one energy provider. Imagine pulling up to a Chevron and being able to charge your EV, fill up with hydrogen, or even use biofuels.
That's a pretty cool vision of the future. All starting from an earnings call. Who knew those boring financial reports could be so interesting?
That's what we do here. We uncover the exciting stuff behind the numbers.
That's right. And speaking of exciting, we'll be back next week with another deep dive into a different company. See you then.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about, Chevron, this company we all think of for oil, suddenly becoming a big name in EV charging.
I think what's really cool to think about is how they could use what they already have. All those gas stations, right? They could turn them into these energy hubs for all kinds of different vehicles and fuels. Yeah, like you pull up and you can charge your EV or fill up with hydrogen or even biofuels, all in one place.
Exactly. And they could even put solar panels on the roofs, really show that they're serious about clean energy.
And it's not just about the fuels, right? They could get into things like battery swapping too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So you wouldn't even have to wait around to charge.
And they could partner with other companies.
For payments, loyalty programs, even route planning that includes charging stops.
It's like Chevron goes from just selling energy to creating this whole ecosystem.
A cleaner, more efficient way to get around.
It's a big vision, but they've got the track record.
And the money to make it happen.
While other companies might struggle to build all that.
Chevron can really jump in and make a difference.
I think it's really exciting to see how this could change things, make that switch to a more sustainable future happen faster.
Definitely. Chevron's story is really interesting.
Going from an oil company to this energy innovator.
And their earnings call gives us a peek into what they're planning.
It just shows that even in those old, established industries, there's always room for change and disruption.
Absolutely.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Chevron's Q4 2024 earnings call. We covered a lot today.
Yeah, we did.
Record production, trade ideas, the future of EV charging.
A company really changing with the times.
As always, we encourage you to check out the full earnings call transcript yourself, get all the details,
It's worth a read.
and keep that curiosity going. Explore the world of business and finance. Until next time.